Welcome back to the Foundation series. In the last video, we stayed in the upper three, Keter, Chokhmah, and Binah, the supernal triad, the realm above thought. Today, we come down, we cross the great divide, what the Kabbalists call the Masach, the curtain, and we enter the 6 Sefirot that make up the heart, the body, and the emotional architecture of the divine. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. These 6 are called by one name in the Zohar, Zeir Anpin, the small face, or more precisely, the short-tempered face, because unlike the supernal triad, which is vast, patient, and beyond time, Zeir Anpin is where the infinite enters relationship, where God responds, where the divine becomes emotional, not in a human reactive way, but in a structured, purposeful, living way. And this is where things become personal. Because if the upper 3 Sefirot describe what God is before creation, these 6 describe how God shows up inside creation and how you show up inside your own life. Let's start with Chesed. Chesed means lovingkindness, unbounded giving, expansion without limit. Chesed is the first impulse of the heart after the mind has conceived, and that impulse is to give everything. Hold nothing back. Pouring out. The Zohar associates Chesed with Avraham. And if you study Avraham's life, you see Chesed in its pure form. He runs to greet strangers in the heat of the day. He argues with God to spare Sodom. He offers everything, his home, his wealth, his son, not because he's calculated the costs, but because his nature is overflow. That's Chesed, the nature of overflow. In the body of Zeir Anpin, Chesed is the right arm, the arm that reaches out, embraces, draws close, and on the tree of life, it sits on the right pillar, the pillar of mercy. It's the force that says, yes, come closer, receive, there is enough, and notice where Chesed sits, directly beneath Chokhmah. This is not random. Chokhmah is the flash of wisdom, the seminal point. Chesed is what happens when that flash touches the heart. Wisdom becomes love. Insight becomes generosity. The mind's first knowing becomes the heart's first giving. That's the vertical channel flowing down the right side of the tree. But here's the tension. Chesed alone, without boundary, is dangerous. Not because giving is wrong, but because giving without structure dissolves everything. A river without banks is a flood. Love without discernment is chaos. And this is exactly why Chesed needs what sits across from it, Gevurah. Gevurah means strength, but it also means judgment, restraint, contraction. If Chesed is the force that says yes, Gevurah is the force that says not yet, or not like this, or not for you. The Zohar associates Gevurah with Isaac And Isaac's story is one of binding, of fire, of being held in place. Isaac doesn't wander like his father. He stays. He digs the same wells. He endures. He submits to the knife on Mount Moriah. Gevurah is the capacity to be contained and to contain. In Zeir Anpin, Gevurah is the left arm, the arm that holds back, that sets the boundary, that says, this space is sacred and not everything gets in. It sits on the left pillar, the pillar of severity. And in the divine economy, severity is not cruelty, it is precision. It's the surgeon's hand, the goldsmith's fire, the pressure that turns carbon into diamond. Gevurah sits directly beneath Binah on the tree. And again, this is structural, not decorative. Binah is the mother who differentiates, who separates, who builds from through distinction. Gevurah inherits that same function in the emotional realm, where Binah says, this is not that at the level of understanding. Gevurah says, this is not that at that level of feeling and action. Boundaries are born in Binah. They are enforced in Gevurah. Now, and this is a deep teaching. The Zohar says that most of the harsh judgment in the world come from Gevurah when it's unbalanced. When severity operates without mercy, you get destruction. When judgment operates without love, you get tyranny. The fallen side of Gevurah is what the Zohar calls the Sitra Achra, the other side. Not because Gevurah is evil, but because when it disconnects from the whole tree, it becomes a force of pure contraction with nowhere to go. And contraction without purpose is suffering. This is why the next Sefirah is so critical. Tiferet. Tiferet means beauty, but beauty in the Kabbalistic sense is not aesthetics. It is harmony. It's the perfect integration of opposites. Tiferet is what happens when Chesed and Gevurah meet, not in compromise, not in dilution, but in a third thing that holds both fully. The Zohar associates Tiferet with Jacob, and Jacob is the most complex of the patriarchs. He embodies both mercy and strength. He loves deeply Rachel, his children, the land, but he also wrestles with angels, with his brother, with God himself, and he is renamed Israel, the one who wrestles with God and prevails. That wrestling, that integration of opposing forces into a living unity, that's Tiferet. In Zeir Anpin, Tiferet is the torso, the trunk, the center. It sits on the middle pillar, the pillar of balance, and everything flows through it. When the Zohar speaks of Zeir Anpin directly, it's often speaking about Tiferet, because Tiferet is the face that Zeir Anpin shows to the world. The 6 Sefirot are named after him, but Tiferet is his core identity. The Zohar calls Tiferet Rachamim, which means compassion. And Rachamim comes from the word Rachem, means womb. So even compassion, in its deepest root, is a kind of holding, a kind of carrying. Tiferet doesn't just balance mercy and judgment, it carries them both inside itself the way a mother carries a child. It feels the weight of both and doesn't let go of either. And here's something important for your own inner work. Whenever you face a situation where mercy pulls you one way and judgment pulls you the other, and you find the response that honors both without betraying either, you are operating from Tiferet. It's not the middle ground, it's the higher ground, the place where opposites don't cancel each other out, they complete each other. Now we move on onto the lower three, Netzach. Netzach means victory, but a better translation is endurance, eternity, the force that persists. If Chesed is the initial outpouring of love, Netzach is what keeps that love going when the road gets long. It's the staying power, the refusal to quit, the engine that drives the vision forward through resistance, through time, through every obstacle that says stop. The Zohar associates Netzach with Moshe, Moses, and think about what Moses endured 40 years in the desert, a people who complain constantly, rejection, rebellion, moments of doubt, and yet he kept going, not because he was stubborn, because the vision was real to him. He had seen the burning bush. He had stood at Sinai, and that vision, once received, could not be abandoned. Netzach is the Sefirah of prophetic drive, the force that takes a divine impulse and fights to bring it into reality no matter what stands in the way. In Zeir Anpin, Netzach is the right leg, the leg that steps forward, the advancing force. It corresponds to Chesed above it on the right pillar. Both are expansive, outward moving, but where Chesed gives freely, Netzach conquers. It overcomes. It endures. Across from Netzach sits Hod. Hod means splendor, but it also means acknowledgement, submission, humility. If Netzach is the force that pushes forward, Hod is the force that knows when to pull back, when to bow, when to say, I don't have this on my own. I need something beyond me. The Zohar associates Hod with Aharon, and Aharon is the peacemaker, the one who yields. He doesn't lead with force. He leads with presence, with devotion, with the willingness to serve a role that is not his own to divine. When Moses speaks, Aharon translates. When the people need intercession, Aharon stands between the living and the dead with incense in his hand. Hod is the grace of stepping aside so something greater can come through. In Zeir Anpin, Hod is the left leg, the leg that anchors, that stabilizes, that keeps balance, while the right leg advances. It corresponds to Gevurah above it on the left pillar. Both involve restraint, holding back, knowing when not to act. And together, Netzach and Hod, they form the foundation of all action in the world. drive and humility, advance and anchor. Without Netzach, you never move. Without Hod, you never stop. You need both legs to walk. Every prophet needs Netzach to receive and push the vision forward, and Hod to surrender the ego and let the message come through uncorrupted. Prophecy itself lives in the interplay of these two. And now we have Yesod, the foundation. Yesod is the most hidden of the six. It's the one people skip over or misunderstand. But in the Zohar, Yesod is everything, because Yesod is the channel. It's the funnel point through which all the energy of the upper Sefirot, everything from Chesed through Hod, is gathered, concentrated, and transmitted downward into the final Sefirah, Malkhut. The kingdom, the physical world. The Zohar associates Yesod with Yosef, or in English, Joseph. And this is not coincidence. Joseph is called Yosef HaTzaddik, Joseph, the righteous one. And the title Tzaddik in the Zohar is directly linked to Yesod. The Tzaddik is the one who receives all the light from above and channels it faithfully below, without distortion, without corruption, without taking for himself what is meant to flow through. Think about Joseph's life. He receives dreams, visions from above. He is thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, imprisoned in Egypt, the lowest place. And through all of it, the light keeps flowing through him. He doesn't break. He doesn't redirect the channel for personal gain. Even when Potiphar's wife offers him the chance to indulge, he refuses. He preserves the channel. He guards the covenant. He is Yesod, the foundation, because he holds the line between what is above and what is below. The Zohar says, Tzaddik Yesod Olam, which means the righteous one is the foundation of the world. And this doesn't mean the Tzaddik holds the world up by force. It means the Tzaddik is the conduit through which divine blessing reaches the world. If Yesod is blocked, if the channel is corrupted, everything above it still exists, but nothing reaches below. The world goes dark, not because the light stopped shining, but because the pipeline was broken. In Zeir Anpin, Yesod is the reproductive organ, and this is not crude, it's precise. Yesod is the point of transmission, the covenant, the brit, the place where potential becomes actual, where everything that has been conceived, balanced, driven, and anchored finally passes into manifestation. It sits on the middle pillar, directly beneath Tiferet, and it gathers everything the tree has produced into a single concentrated point of transfer. Now step back and see the whole picture. These six, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, are not six separate forces. They are one being, Zeir Anpin, the small face of God, the aspect of the divine that engages with creation, that feels, that responds, that acts. The Zohar describes Zeir Anpin as the son born from Binah, the mother. Everything that Binah conceived and developed in silence is what Zeir Anpin embodies in motion. He is the living expression of what the supernal triad planned, and his purpose, his entire reason for existing, is to transmit that light downward, to bring the infinite into relationship with the finite, to be the bridge between the mind of God and the body of the world. And here's the personal dimension. When you love, that's Chesed flowing through you. When you set a boundary, that's Gevurah. When you find the response that holds both love and strength, that's Tiferet. When you persist through difficulty, that's Netzach. When you humble yourself before something greater, that's Hod. When you transmit truth without distortion, that's Yesod. You are Zeir Anpin. You are the small face, not a metaphor, a living mirror of the divine structure you were built from. In the next video, we arrive at the final Sefirah, Malkhut, the kingdom, the Shekhinah, the bride, where all the light finally lands, where heaven touches earth, and where your actual life right now, in this body, in this moment, becomes the vessel for everything we've been building across the entire series. I will see you there. Shalom.